In 2019, I started the series taking a look at what I consider to be main series SpongeBob games, but ended up stopping after only talking about 2 games, Revenge of the Flying Dutchman and Battle for Bikini Bottom. Then in 2020, I continued the series with a video essay about the SpongeBob movie game, and shared my thoughts on the rehydrated remake in the months following its release, leaving behind quite a few games I planned on talking about. We'll pretend I did this on purpose. Let's say I wanted to cover Battle for Bikini Bottom in its entirety, including its predecessor, sequel, and remake. And now I can fully move on to other games, starting with SpongeBob SquarePants Creature from the Krusty Krab. I've never played this game, though I watched the trailer for it plenty when I was younger through my copy of Barnyard for GameCube and really wanted to play it. Now that I finally picked it up, I'm excited to dive in and give it a shot, so let's go. I want to start by laying out the format of this video. This game has a very strange structure and would be tough to fully cover in one of my traditional formats. So instead, I'm going to discuss all the gameplay styles in the order they're introduced and explain the premise leading up to them, then share my thoughts on the experience as a whole at the end. If you're interested in watching certain parts more so than others, please feel free to use the timestamps to get where you want to watch. The game opens with a cutscene of Bikini Bottom at nighttime, as all the sea creatures sleep and explore
the mysterious world of dreams. Grilled cheese.
Then it cuts to SpongeBob's blanket flying off to reveal his bed is some sort of car, before showing him grab hold of the wheel and drive through the side of his house and enter the first level. For some reason, being in this car makes his face do this weird thing, and it doesn't ever explain why. I get it's trying to be weird and random like a typical dream would be, but did they really have to do that? Didn't they think that was a little too much? These faces are creepy, and some of the animations make them look even worse. Not really sure what was going through their heads when they were designing this. I don't know, the first driving level starts and it's very generic. Hold A to go forward, B to go back, and use the control stick to move. How innovative. Oh, in the later driving sections, there's an upgrade that allows you to boost here and there as well, but that's it. And the racetracks themselves are super boring. Each one has you racing some character to the finish as they occasionally drop some obstacles in your way. It actually feels very similar to the paddy wagon levels in the SpongeBob movie game, except at least those tracks had some fun secrets and weren't so damn bland. It had you driving through actual locations from the movie, where here you're just on some generic racetrack. This doesn't feel like a world, it's dumb. I will say, this car controls far better than the paddy wagon, but it's your typical rectangular car and doesn't have the more cubic design of the paddy wagon, so it better be. It's whatever, these aren't fun, but they don't take up much time, so they're alright. After each of the first 3 races, you're thrown in some more familiar looking 3D SpongeBob gameplay, and this is actually pretty good. You've got a double jump, spin attack, whose spinning animation is actually a lot cooler than the previous ones, as well as a ground pound, swing, and run button, which is kind of a big deal. None of the first 3 SpongeBob games had a run button, unless you count Patrick's cartwheel in the movie game, but that was only usable if you were playing as Patrick. This is the first time SpongeBob has been able to run in a 3D game, and it's awesome, but not exactly what I wanted. You hold R and he winds up and charges forward, which is one of the worst ways to allow a character to run and is a major letdown. Come on. And something kinda weird that's worth mentioning is the sound it makes as you wind up. I swear to God that's the Scooby-Doo run sound. Listen again. See, that time it was the Scooby-Doo sound effect. It's the same. They stole this and it really doesn't fit SpongeBob. It feels so odd, it's kinda funny. And on the topic of movement sounds, when you do that tiptoe walk thing, it doesn't have the piano key sound effects like in Battle for Bikini Bottom. We're getting off topic. Moving on from that, you've got full control over the camera and it works great. There's no problems with it at all, and I'll leave it at that. So yeah, I think the SpongeBob gameplay is great, the moveset does the job, and everything's comfortable to control. So what about the level designs? Well, each one has you on a quite linear path to find some car parts to fix up your vehicle, doing some light platforming and solving some puzzles. Now when I say puzzles, I mean press this super obvious button, then wait a few seconds for the game to show you what platform was put into place, then go reach some new heights. It's not complex and just feels tedious. Not as tedious as the enemy waves though. Most enemies are the same type and can be killed by your basic spin attack, and others have to be charged first and then hit with the old spin attack. What really makes these waves annoying is how many pauses there are between doing one thing and another. Like look here, you defeat these 3 enemies in like 5 seconds, then everything stops, the game shows you a door opening and more enemies walking out, waits a couple more seconds, then lets you go and fight them. This is dumb. These enemy waves are stupid easy, but these damn breaks make them so annoying to take on. And it's not just for enemy waves. Every time you trigger a platform to move or activate something, the game feels the need to stop everything and show you. I get it, it's helpful to see sometimes, but the majority of the time I know what the button is going to activate and don't need to keep stopping to see. It's so frustrating. This isn't just the SpongeBob levels, this is a recurring thing throughout the entire game. The experience is constantly halted by cutscenes that contain no value whatsoever. And sometimes when you complete simple little challenges, SpongeBob finds the need to do this little dance. Like, why? I completed 5 little jumps. Is that really necessary? Anyways, that's all I really have to say about these opening SpongeBob levels. Slow, repetitive, and bland. But hey, it's the beginning of the game, and you can't expect a ton of challenge and creativity right off the bat. After beating the 4th racing stage, SpongeBob drives off a cliff, and that's the last we see of him for a while, ending what I'll call the SpongeBob tutorial chunk. It then cuts to Patrick laying in bed sleeping, and the news scaring him awake to warn him that the dreaded Patrick is terrorizing the town. So he immediately springs into action to save the day, kicking off the 3D Patrick chunk of levels, which aren't too bad. He controls almost the same as SpongeBob, except now when you press X, he blows a ton of air that can propel fans and activate certain events. This hardly adds anything to the level design though. Now instead of ground pounding buttons all the time, you blow a fan that does the same thing. Very innovative. No, what is innovative is the visual style of these levels, very comic book inspired and cool to look at, but the charm wears off pretty quickly and these levels become a drag. You know how I said the last level had a ton of those cutscenes showing when minuscule things happened? Yeah, these do that too, and it's way more annoying because it happens way more frequently and the events take longer. Every time a new wave of enemies shows up, it shows this super slow animation of the enemies jumping out of wanted posters. Like, I get it, it's a cool visual effect, but I don't need to see it 50 times. Oh, and the tutorial is brutal. Hardly anything controls differently from SpongeBob, but the game feels the need to explain everything again, one piece at a time. A telephone box will ring, prompting Starfish Man to take the call and then be explained a super simple thing, which would be fine if the conversation didn't drag so much.
Starfish Man never turns down a challenge.
Great. You know how to do your super turbo twist attack, right?
Super turbo... Huh?
Don't worry, it's easy.
I like easy. Where are these bad guys anyway?
Jeez, I feel like Squidward waiting for Patrick to order some food. I guess I gotta remember poop.
Poop?
Please omit a rating, Patrick.
Ah, poop.
And don't feel bad if you don't know what O-rating means. I didn't until I needed a word that starts with O and essentially means talking, so there you go, you learn something new every day. Anyways, the whole beginning of this first Patrick stage is stopped every 30 seconds by one of these tutorials, and it blows. So we've pointed out the enemy waves halting progress, as well as platforms moving and these telephone boxes, but that's not all. The dreaded Patrick stops the gameplay a ton too, and says nothing more than, "Fuck you." I guess the dreaded Patrick is a fitting name. Oh, and this other part has you saving this dude from a train, then having to find all his articles of clothing because he refuses to walk around in just his underwear, which seems fine enough, but every single time you find something, you have to walk back to where he is and have him stop everything to say,
I still can't move until you found my whole outfit.
"No shit." I'm well aware I'm staying on this point for too long, but it's a major annoyance in the game, and I want to really emphasize how much it makes the game suffer. These Patrick levels would honestly be quite enjoyable if it wasn't for the constant interruptions. They're super simple and basic in structure, but they'd still be fun. While playing these couple levels, I was just feeling frustrated. If something's basic, let me fly through it and move on to something that offers me a challenge. Don't drag it out and bore me. I would have stopped playing here if I wasn't committed to beating it for this video, so you're welcome. This chunk ends with Starfish Man trying to save this dude that's tied on a rocket, which gets him knocked out, tied to a rocket himself, and sent off into the atmosphere. Then we got to Plankton sleeping and allegedly being jolted awake by a nightmare, at which point he remembers he managed to steal a Krabby Patty crumb and wants to enlarge it to get the recipe. All's going well until he's unable to make it stop growing, so to counteract that, he decides to make himself 100 times bigger, which just turns out to be normal size. Then the burger is somehow able to move on its own and corners Plankton, which makes him realize there's no stopping the thing, so he makes a run for it, throws some freeze ray on his head, and we get to help him escape the Patty's clutches. We'll call this the Run Plankton Run chunk, which consists of linear 2.5D stages that have you running and dodging simple obstacles, which is pretty much it. There's not much to these levels at all, just hold right, jump when you need to, and occasionally shoot the freeze ray at an enemy. It's really easy. An enemy at an enemy. Okay. There's no challenge to these at all. There's some optional collectibles that are in a tough to reach spot here and there, but they don't do much to make these levels very engaging. You just run at this slow pace and react to what's in front of you. The level layouts are basic at best, but most importantly, they're not fun. I'll give it this, the gameplay's relatively inoffensive, and it doesn't keep pausing like the other ones, so it's a smooth experience, but there's so little actual gameplay to it that I can't consider it above average. There's 5 of these stages total, and after you complete each one, you have to play this really stupid, unskippable minigame. You move left and right and grab the required amount of falling objects before the time runs out. It's not bad or anything, but why? Why is this necessary to play? Now, you don't have to succeed to progress, but you can't skip it, so even if you decide you don't want to play it, you'll just have to sit there until the minute is up. Again, it's not broken, but why is it even here? It's a waste of time and just forces the player to wait longer to play more of the game they signed up to play. All the development time put into these stupid minigames could have been much better spent polishing the core gameplay mechanics or maybe constructing some more interesting levels, but nope. Here, race on this generic track. Now grab the following items and freeze when the Patty turns around. There's so many unnecessary disturbances throughout the entire experience that it makes the game as a whole a chore to play through, and this is only scratching the surface. Nothing alone is bad, but it's trying to do too much and really doesn't thrive in any regard. It's a shame. But that aside, when you complete all the levels, Plankton gets squashed by the Patty, and it brings us back to SpongeBob, who's falling from the incident previously, and we've got to guide him through the abyss and not hit anything. It's straightforward and overall fine, and once you do that... oh SpongeBob gets chomped and falls into the worm's stomach, where he finds Old Man Jenkins and they agree to work together to escape. SpongeBob's gotta find some parts and Jenkins will assemble the flying machine. This leads to what I'll call the Alaskan bullworm chunk of the game, which is the cream of the crop of SpongeBob, creature from the Krusty Krab. The gameplay from the SpongeBob tutorial chunk comes back and is used for some more challenging and complex levels, which is awesome. You get to explore this worm, save some tied up sea creatures, and face some actual challenges. This part of the game holds your hand a lot less, as it's the gameplay we're familiar with from the beginning, so they could build off of that and make some tough sections to work through. It's not perfect, and the designs don't feel as solid overall as those in BFBB in the movie game, but they're still really good and a total blast to play through. Every time you find one of the key pieces though, the level stops and you have to play this lame crane game that has you sorting a bunch of junk to the proper end of the conveyor belt. And these are yet another waste of time, this time for 90 seconds, but you know what? They're not that bad, don't occur very often, and the rest of this section is so good that I can completely ignore it. This is the most fun I've gotten out of this game. There were times that it felt like I was playing one of those stellar heavy iron games. The only downside is that it doesn't last long enough. There's over an hour of content here, so it's not really lacking, but once you find all the pieces and escape the worm, that's it for this traditional 3D SpongeBob gameplay, which sucks, especially considering how much game there is after this. Without skipping a beat, it cuts to Patrick falling from the sky, attached to some rocket, and another new and bland gameplay style is thrown at you: flying. What, you thought the upcoming chunk would bring back the 3D Patrick gameplay? Me too, but nope. How about a brand new lackluster gameplay style instead? All you do is move around space, avoid the obstacles, shoot at some stuff, and fly into the fuel tanks to keep going. That's it, and it's really boring. They tried to make it more interesting by throwing a shooting minigame in the middle that's as simple as turning and pressing the right button, and there's a quick boss fight against a giant robo patty, but it's still lame. This chunk altogether takes less than 15 minutes and it's straight up not fun. I'm not even gonna give it a label. We'll call it useless for the sake of the format, but it doesn't even deserve that. It ends with Patrick crashing down to Earth, and we're then shown Plankton making himself gigantic to avoid the patty. For real this time, and wreaking havoc across Bikini Bottom, beginning the giant Plankton chunk of the game, which is pretty decent. You can move, press A to swing at things, B to shoot a laser, and X to stomp. There's not much to it, but honestly, just running rampant across town and destroying everything in sight is a lot of fun. These are broken up into somewhat short stages. In every couple, there's a building destroying minigame that has you press a string of buttons in the correct order to knock a story off a building, which I actually kinda had fun with. For the levels themselves, once the initial excitement and appeal of smashing stuff as giant plankton wears off, it's not all that great. It just kinda keeps going, but it's still decent overall. Then we get to the endgame chunk, with SpongeBob flying out of the worm's mouth and trying to stop Plankton's evil wrath. These levels are on a plane and play just like the Patrick ones from the useless chunk, so I guess the use of that was to prepare you for this, but it's so simple that it still didn't need it. Regardless, these levels are way more interesting, at least visually. There's a ton happening and a bunch of obstacles to avoid, including some attacks from Plankton. It's exciting and pretty action-packed. This goes on for a few stages, and once you shoot down the 4 targets in the final stage, SpongeBob flies right into Plankton's hand, and something bad happens, I guess. Not really sure though, but as this happens, Starfish Man comes flying down to save the day. And this time, the gameplay is just like the 3D Patrick ones from earlier. Most of it is just enemy waves, but there's some decent puzzles to solve to do damage to him, and it's actually pretty good. All his moves are put to use in a clever way and really improve this boss fight. It's like what the worm levels did for SpongeBob's gameplay, except for Patrick. It's just too bad this one's significantly shorter. After you win, the 3 fall on top of each other and are brought to this strange white place with a talking Krabby Patty doctor dude. I have no idea, but it leads to this really strange racing finale with all the wackiest stuff the 3 minds can come up with. It's the same racing gameplay from the beginning, but the track is actually really interesting and has a lot going on, so it's pretty fun. It's kinda trippy, but that's exactly what they were going for, so they nailed it, not to mention the fact that it's the best designed track in the game, so it's a fine note to end the game on. When you finish the race, SpongeBob wakes up in the middle of the night with some giant Krabby Patty, which he brings back to the Krusty Krab, slices up, and feeds these disturbingly low-quality fish models. Then he realizes he has a shell on his back, and apparently so does everyone else, at which point it's revealed that it was Gary's dream the whole time. What? This ending is so dumb. Jeez, I don't even know what to say, just wow. I went into this game after hearing some pretty decent things about it, and after playing it for myself, I'm genuinely confused as to why that is. This game is not good. It really isn't. From start to finish, it had me scratching my head as to what the hell was going on, and I understand this is kind of what they were going for with the whole dream setup, but they went about it in such an offsetting way. They didn't use this to give reasoning to some super wacky, interesting, and creative worlds. No, I genuinely think the devs were just like,
oh, this is going to be such a mind.
I think the SpongeBob's Dream level from BFBB handles the whole idea so much better, and the fact that it actually feels like SpongeBob really helps with that. This is just so out of left field and doesn't even feel like SpongeBob. I know it had some stellar games to stand out from, but they went about it the wrong way. This doesn't feel unique, it's just strange. The visuals don't help with this at all. Some stuff just looks flat out creepy, and it overall doesn't look anywhere near as good as those Heavy Iron games, despite being released several years later. And I don't get why the soundtrack is so widely considered to be amazing when it's really not all that great. A lot of the stuff just kinda repeats and gets annoying, and none of the tracks stood out to me. me. But what hurts the experience the most is that the game tries to do way too much. There's too many different gameplay styles in the game, and it doesn't feel like variety, it feels like filler. And the ones that should be important, like the 3D SpongeBob and Patrick ones, aren't even that polished when compared to the rest of the game. These could have used a lot more work, and I think it really would have made the game more enjoyable to play, but as it stands now, it's not worth playing. You know, I can't help but draw similarities between this game and the episodes of SpongeBob coming out at the time of its creation. This game came out in 2006, right around the time seasons 4 and 5 were airing. These seasons had some really great moments that feel so similar to the golden age of SpongeBob, but then there was quite a bit of just, what the hell was that? And that's exactly what Creature from the Krusty Krab is like. You'll be playing this pretty familiar looking game, then all of a sudden you look like this and are driving a car. There's little bits of those amazing things that fit right in with SpongeBob's prime, and then there's all the low quality filler surrounding it that ruin the product as a whole. No, you should not play this game. If you want to play a SpongeBob game, play Battle for Bikini Bottom, and if you want more of that, then play the SpongeBob movie game. If you've played both of those and still want more, then I don't know what to tell you. The little bits of goodness in this game aren't worth playing it all the way through. It's not fun and you should definitely avoid it. But hang on, it's not bad. It's a mediocre game, and I'd still consider it better than Revenge of the Flying Dutchman, but it's nowhere near the quality of these heavy iron SpongeBob games. What the fuck? What a weird dream. Thank God that's over. Hey, thank you so very much for watching the video. If you like what you see, drop a like, and if you want to see more and help the channel grow, you should definitely subscribe. If you want to watch more videos like the one you just finished up, check out my SpongeBob videos playlist. There's tons of similar stuff in there about other SpongeBob games that I know you'll enjoy. Thanks, I'll see you later.